day, everyone. My name is Dr. Fundi. Welcome to the Health Matters podcast by Dr. Fundi. Today, we're going to have a conversation about a matter that is of national concern. Today, we are basically talking about botched traditional circumcisions. Botched traditional circumcisions. Every December, every winter season, newspapers and news items, they report about the number of young men and boys who die in the process of their transition to become adults. So today, we're going to be navigating this very sensitive topic of many young men who are dying in our country, dying as part of practicing their culture and their tradition. In fact, let me just go into an article that I read from the Commission for Gender Equality, an article that was written by Naledi Silibano, Tubelihle Zita, and Princess Malebie. It says, initiation is one of the world's oldest traditional practices that has been observed across many cultures. In South Africa, the practice is observed amongst Nguni people, which include AmaXhosa, AmaZulu, AmaSwati, and AmaNdebele people. The practice is also observed by other ethnic groups, including Bapedi, that is the North Sotho, the Southern Sotho, that is Basotho, Bamushweshwe, Masimula, Lemba, the Matlala of the Northwest, the Mamabulu of the Woodbush, the Shangantsonga, Bavenda, Balobedu, Bahananwa, Litswalo, Kaka, and Tswana people. So when you just listen to those, that basically it's almost all the ethnic groups of South Africa. The article further goes and says, undergoing traditional initiation is a means of attaining identity and honor for those who practice it. The practice is also considered an important, exciting part of the upbringing of young men, without which they can neither participate in the social activities and affairs of their communities, nor take up the advances of women to prepare for marriage. Initiation is further considered as a rite of passage to manhood, which is a source of pride for young men across different tribes within the South African society. South Africa has, however, in the past few years, witnessed heightened media reports of botched circumcisions, poor health outcomes, and fatalities of boys and young men admitted at initiation schools. These atrocities are often associated with the emergence of unregulated practitioners who operate initiation schools without the approval of government. So that's just the intro to our conversation. Let me further say a lot of work has been done in terms of looking at this problem. I've already mentioned that almost all the ethnic groups in South Africa do practice this practice of initiation. But the one ethnic group where we are hearing more deaths than any other in South Africa is the Xhosa people in the Eastern Cape largely, although there are Xhosa people in the Western Cape, but it's largely in the Eastern Cape. One of the articles I read mentioned that plus minus 75% of all deaths from this traditional circumcision or botched circumcisions are actually from the Eastern Cape amongst the Xhosa people. So in our conversation, therefore, we will be focusing more around this cultural practice of ulwaluko, that is traditional initiation, which is a rite of passage from boyhood to manhood. We will be focusing on the deaths, but we'll also be focusing on an issue that is less talked about, because there are many who do not die or who survive death but are left maimed. That is, their genital organs are left permanently disabled because of these botched circumcisions. So we will also talk about them, because I think that's the silent majority of botched cases that we don't hear much about. We hear a lot about deaths, but we don't hear much about those boys who had to have their penises amputated because of complications that took place in the, in the traditional circumcision school. So I am not alone. As usual, I've got my co-pilot, Mr. Sipho Masigo. He comes from the Tswana group. And as we've read here, some Tswanas, they do undergo this practice, especially in the rural Tswana land.
Yeah.
Guys from Soweto may not necessarily be doing this stuff, or be taken Komahaying to go and do this stuff. But in the Eastern Cape, whether you stay in Sentin or you stay in Soweto or wherever, you must. So if you no longer have a home in the Eastern Cape, there must be some uncle or relative somewhere that must actually facilitate this thing. So, Mr. Masigo, welcome to our Health Matters podcast. As always, I enjoy co-piloting with you.
Thank you, Doc.
Because you ask those pertinent questions that force one to dig deep, to come up with the answers. And I'm sure even in this topic, as much as because we're going to be focusing more around the Xhosa people, because most of the deaths are coming from that part of the world. So therefore, you are looking at this matter as an outsider.
Yes.
And it is important sometimes to have somebody as an outsider to ask the right questions. Because when you are part of that community, sometimes for many reasons, you may not want to ask certain things. There's a lot of secrecy around this practice. And so it's important that whilst I am a Xhosa man who's gone through the practice, who happens to be a medical doctor as well, I identify with that community and the culture. But obviously, I don't identify with the loss of life.
Absolutely.
And the maiming of young men.
So
you, as an outsider, I think you must ask those questions because you never know.
Absolutely.
You never know, and it helps to converse about some of these things that sometimes society, puts them under the carpet. They are taboo to talk about. Yet, if you just look in the last 20 years or last 10 years, hundreds of our young men and boys die. If we say, for example, per annum, winter and summer, we've got about 60 deaths. So 60 deaths times 10, that's that's about 600.
600 people.
Yes.
Young boys.
Young boys who have died. So that's a serious matter. So I think it's important at this point. There are already articles that are coming out in the newspapers about deaths that have happened in this summer season of initiation, especially from the Eastern Cape. But But anyway, over to you.
Absolutely. Good evening and good afternoon to all the Dr. Fundi channel followers. And thank you very much for having me, Doc. Always a pleasure to co-pilot with you and the team right here. It's always interesting conversations, Doc. And I've got a video that I wanted us to start with. It basically explains the number of deaths that are happening in the Eastern Cape itself.
Yes.
And then we continue with the conversations thereafter this short intro of a video. And then we take it from there, Doc.
Lovely. Let's
All
go
right.
ahead.
Let's go ahead.
Thanks for staying with us. Every year, thousands of boys go through the rite of passage at initiation schools across the country. But sadly, far too many of them don't come back home alive. In the Eastern Cape, 5 deaths have been recorded since the beginning of the initiation season last month. Unscrupulous circumcision schools are often blamed for not adhering to the best practices required by government. ENCA's Ronald Masinda tells us more.
The bushes of the Eastern Cape are a hive of activity with thousands of initiates harboring ambitions of becoming men.
I think it's very important, especially this stage. A week ago, it was initiation. Then this after 7 days, we go to Botched. It's where on the initiation, the umkweta is restricted to eat dry food. And on this stage now, we are after a week. We are on this stage whereby we allow him to eat whatever that is healthy, but it's still under strict control.
However, many of these boys don't live to see their dreams coming true. 5 deaths have been reported in the Eastern Cape, among them a 16-year-old from Dantsane, who was not even supposed to undergo the ritual due to health issues. Andile Sigo is a traditional surgeon who has been in the practice for 23 years. He says more needs to be done to educate others in his line of work.
There are those out there who think that a circumcision is a survival of the fittest. I would like to condemn those because it is not. Now, it is very unfortunate that the government is always pointing fingers at these poor people out there, poor people with no voice at all. Because at least give these people some training, give these people workshops, visit them randomly now and again.
The Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs in the Eastern Cape says it has provided strict guidelines for initiation schools to adhere to, and that initiates are required to provide medical reports to prove their fitness to undergo the circumcision ritual. Ronald Masinda, Mdantsane.
There you have it, Doc. Sure, very scary. And this thing happens year after year, Doc.
This is basically something that we expect every year around winter season and also during the summer season. We hear of these deaths. And I think over time, it's actually getting to be worse. You know, yes, there was a drop last year to about 23 during the summer season. The previous year, it was 34 boys that died, right? Last year, it was 23. An article I read earlier today, already there's plus minus 20 boys who died, or 20 boys who died at the circumcision schools. But I must say that about 5 of those are not directly, dying of complications from the practice.
Okay.
3 of those, there's criminality. There's 2 initiates who were shot dead.
Okay.
And then there's also another one from Rebecca who was shot dead. And then there's 2 others who had other previous health problems, So, but having said that, at least 15 of the boys died from botched circumcisions. All right? And we still have maybe another 3 weeks to go, So God knows whether we will top the 23 from last year or we will match the 34 from the previous year. I'm just talking about the summer season.
Yeah.
So it is a sad state of affairs that by practicing their traditional culture, it actually becomes a highway to death. You know, it should not be. We should not be losing young people just because they elected to follow their tradition or their culture.
So, Doc, my first question to you is exactly what you just said. So, tradition is, you know, it's obviously a practice that everybody believes, that a man should go through this path in order for, or a young man or a boy must go through this path.
Yes.
But now there is too many deaths in the Eastern Cape.
Yes. Now, let me just explain a bit.
Okay.
In the Eastern Cape, and I'm going to be focusing on the Eastern Cape because that's the one that I am, familiar with.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about, Ndebeles and Bedis and other people because I don't know that side. All I know is that they also do initiation.
Yeah.
Now, in the Eastern Cape, or amongst the Xhosa people, and by the way, Xhosa people are not only in the Eastern Cape, they are throughout the country. Even in Zimbabwe, there is a community of Xhosa people there.
Even in Zirast.
Exactly,
Yeah.
So, but the practice is the same.
Yeah.
So we call this whole process of transition from boyhood to manhood ulwaluko.
Ulwaluko.
Yes.
Okay.
Ulwaluko. So that's the whole process. It's a process of transitioning from boyhood to manhood.
Okay.
It's got two parts,
Okay.
right? The first part is the surgical part. Yeah. The surgical part whereby the foreskin, in Xhosa we call it ijwabi. The foreskin is removed. Yeah. By a traditional surgeon.
Yes.
All right. So this is a lay person who over time has learned and acquired a skill of how to do this thing safely, how to remove the foreskin safely.
Yeah.
Right? So, and they are normally mentored by an older traditional surgeon.
Yeah.
Until they get to a point where they are past to be, that they can actually do this on their own, Unfortunately, nowadays, there's many people who don't go through the proper training and mentoring and coaching processes. They are microwaved traditional surgeons,
Yeah.
who don't have the skill. And the other matter is that when a traditional surgeon does this, the family of that young man gives a bottle of alcohol and also some payment, maybe 1,000 rand. I don't know what it is now. It could even be higher than that. All right? So this traditional surgeon, therefore, has got ample access to alcohol. So even those who are experienced, they may be paralytic, or they may be drunk as they perform this circumcision.
Those are the possibilities that...
Those are the possibilities. So whilst many do a good job because they are well experienced, well trained, but you've got a lot of fly-by-night traditional surgeons who are, like I said, microwaved in terms of training, and others, they just don't know what they're doing, So that's the first part, the removal of the foreskin.
Wait, before you move to the second part, Doc, what happens? Do they put it on the table? Do they chop it like a guillotine? Or by twara so by sich?
Yeah. No. Well, traditionally,
Yeah.
they make use of a spear. So a spear is sharpened.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
And then they will pull the foreskin.
Okay.
All right. And the head of the penis will be pushed back.
Oh.
And then they will make a cut. All
With a
right?
spear.
Yes, a sharp spear.
Yeah.
Yeah. They
Okay.
will make a cut, and then after that you say, "Din order."
Ha.
You know.
Okay.
Yabo?
Yeah.
But it needs skill
Yeah.
such that you remove as much of the foreskin as possible,
Okay.
so that the head of the penis, which is pushed back,
It's protected.
is not going to be cut in that process of cutting the foreskin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But sometimes, like I said, for many reasons, poorly skilled or drunk or whatever, sometimes they just remove a portion of this thing.
Of the
And they're
head.
supposed to just cut once. It's
Yeah.
not like you are cutting meat.
Yeah.
Where, you know.
Okare ke shakga, wa
No.
Yeah.
You don't do that.
Yeah, okay.
It's supposed to be like
Quick and easy and out.
quick, easy and out. You push the head back, you pull the foreskin as much as possible, and you make the cut, and that's it.
Do they
You
put the penis on something?
No.
They hold it.
You stand,
Oh,
or sometimes you squat. You know.
Okay.
It depends. I mean, there's different techniques.
Okay.
But the bottom line is that the foreskin is pulled, and then the head is pushed back. You know, and
Okay.
then a cut is made. You know, and with the issue of HIV and AIDS.
yes, yeah.
Obviously, some of these practices have been improved now, where you can't use the same spear on all of this unless it's going to be put on fire. You know, so that if there are any germs with the first one, you don't give it to the second one.
Yes.
You know, but anyway, let's not focus on the
For sure.
what is done there.
Yeah.
Bottom line is, a
That's-
foreskin is removed.
Yeah.
All right. So that's the first part.
Okay.
And then the second part of this ulwaluko is a part whereby that young man who is now recovering from the cut, because now there's a wound,
Yeah.
right? That wound needs to be managed on a daily, you know, up until he heals, which is usually weeks from that point. Yeah. So during that process of healing, then there's supposed to be classes,
Okay.
right? Initiation classes that are conducted by older men, wise men, that are meant to train and empower this young man on what it means to be a man. You know, what does it mean to be a responsible member of society? You know, what does it mean to be a father? You know, what does it mean to be a husband? You know, all of those things, so that, because after doing this, you must have, you know, heard me earlier that in other communities, if you have not yet undergone this, you can't even go and, you know, marry.
Oh, you first start.
You must first be an indorder before you can go and want to marry. So therefore, it's actually a very good thing, you know, that one is in a mentorship and coaching program of about 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Sometimes it could, you know, in the olden days, it could even go up to 6 months in the olden days. But because everyone goes to school, or majority of people go to school, you don't have that luxury of time. So it's normally now 3 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks, but not more than that. Yeah. So those are the two, the surgical part and the initiation, school, mentorship, coaching part. Unfortunately, over time, the people who are knowledgeable about this practice, people who have the skill on how to cut, people who have the skill on how to manage the wound, they are becoming far and few. You know, and as a result, we are experiencing problems in the surgical part, that is the actual cutting, in the wound management part, which is done by a traditional nurse. We call it ikangata.
Ikankata.
Yes.
Okay.
Traditional nurse, that's the person who looks after the wound until it heals. But also, there are issues relating to the environment and how the environment affects these initiates. You know, I mean, if now the temperatures are hitting 36, 38, you know,
The wound.
and in that first week, as you've heard in one of the videos, they're supposed to have dry food, meaning no fluid.
Okay.
All right? No fluid for 7 days. You can understand because when you pass urine, it's going to be painful,
Oh my God. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's going to be painful.
Yeah.
So they designed this program and they just completely banned water, you know, or any fluids. But that's actually a bad thing because you can't be exposing somebody to
The heat.
the sweating, the evaporation, and everything for a week. And they don't have access to fluids or fluid intake, which is why a significant number of these boys, they die from dehydration.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but yeah, so I thought let me just clarify that it's a two-part process.
Yeah. Makes sense.
But it's been corrupted, the surgical part, by unskilled people or people who are ill-disciplined, even if they are skilled.
yeah.
But also the other part of the coaching, the mentoring, the training, it's
Is-
also been, corrupted. There's a lot of substance abuse that takes place there, dacha and other drugs.
Whereas you should be learning about manhood, but
Yes.
that takes place.
Yes, and other people, they just see these places as places to go and chill, if they've got nothing to do.
Yeah.
And therefore interfering with those classes that are supposed to take place. And many other things that are happening there that, it's a very good practice, right? This ulwaluko, it's a very good practice if done in a pure way. But with the problems that are there, it's becoming a problem.
So, Doc, now you're a doctor who has gone through this process. Are you not conflicted to say, I'm in support of such a program, yet the number of deaths as a result of everything you've mentioned now, I doubt, I don't know, but the cleanliness part of it, and like you say, you don't know if sterilizer, the equipment, all sorts of medical concerns. I think you've raised them yourself. Are you not conflicted on this matter?
So I must restate that as a cultural practice, as a traditional practice, it still has a place in society.
Okay.
Done properly by the right skilled people, it still has, a place. However, I must also say, as a medical person who has gone through the process, who has managed patients that had botched circumcisions, having worked in Port Elizabeth, in Motherwell, we would be called at night to come and see some of these young men who are complicating. And so I've seen the other side of what happens and how long it takes. It normally takes long before somebody is brought to modern medicine because the association of the practice and modern medicine, especially in some parts of the Eastern Cape, if you are cut by a doctor, they don't recognize you as a man.
Aibo.
Right? What nowadays we call medical male circumcision, MMC. If you are cut by a medical doctor, Western trained doctor, you are not recognized. So if you went the traditional way and then you complicate there and you actually need medical care, they tend to be reluctant to actually refer you to Western medicine, you know. So by the time somebody gets to hospital or a clinic, the infections or whatever problem that they are presenting with is now more of an emergency. So as a medical doctor, as much as I support the practice, I, however, feel the custodians of the practice need to relook the practice and be able to allow medical people like myself to bring in certain modernization of the practice. For example, I've already mentioned the fact that there is no water in the first week. I mean, I don't understand, because the reason why we drink water, our body cells, for them to function, they need water.
True.
For us to remove germs and other things from our body, we need to urinate. You know, must pass urine. So if you're gonna say we're supposed to drink at least about 1.5 to 2 liters of water per day, you know. So if you, and then it becomes more the need for water if you are out there where there's a lot of heat.
True.
You know, you'll sweat. So the 1.5 to 2 liters may not be enough. So to say there must be no water intake during that period, for me, it makes no sense. That's number one. It may have been designed to limit the number of times one has to pass urine, because obviously whenever you pass urine, it becomes very painful. But it makes no sense. And the number one reason why these boys are dying is dehydration. So that's a preventable matter.
Yeah.
So if the culture can just be, you know, modified to ensure that there is adequate fluid intake, water
Can save lives.
it will save lives. You know, so that's one area. Number two, when you have a wound, anyway, right? You need proteins.
Proteins.
Yes, in your body to heal the wound. You know, you need proteins to heal. If you are going to be denied protein intake, you know, there's no meat, there's nothing in that first week as well. You know, so, and then at the end of the 7 days, there is a celebration. That's when then you are allowed to now take water and other types of foods. You know, so, but if the health status of that young man was already compromised prior to, you know, them going for this process, then one must not be surprised that the outcomes may not be very good. You know, because if the boy has got HIV, you know, is immunocompromised, then the chances of him catching infections and infections spreading quickly very high. Which is why, at least in the Eastern Cape, there's now guidelines that you should not undergo this practice if you don't have a medical certificate or report that clears you that you don't have pre-existing illnesses.
That makes
You know,
sense.
but again, enforcement of such is not always there, especially with the illegal circumcision schools. So, so there are certain modifications. Also, groups of nurses and doctors, male nurses and male doctors, are now being accepted in some communities that they go and do rounds in these legal, you know, circumcision schools, so that if there are kids who are going through trouble, they can be assisted. You know, so there's some small wins from a modernization and introduction of the modern medicine to try and make things better. But in some communities, still, even if you are a male doctor or a male nurse, they don't want you anywhere near you know, they are initiates. So you said I'm conflicted. I'm not conflicted.
Okay.
My job is to save lives. Yeah. The practice done properly is actually good.
Okay.
The problem is there are certain things that need to be modified in the process, from the cutting to the wound management to the general health management, water intake, to the quality of food, you know, but also on the ability of that traditional nurse to manage the wound, because there is supposed to be some form of bandaging of the wound.
Yes.
You know, that must be done daily, you know. And it's a tricky one, because if you make the you know, the bandaging, you know, sometimes they use leaves and other things.
Yeah.
Nowadays, the collaborations with the clinics, they bring bandages there just to help, because other people take old clothes and cut them and use that, which can introduce infections. So nowadays, you know, traditional schools that are legal are given some of these so that they can use them. You know, so, but what I'm talking about here is the actual amount of pressure that one must put so that the bleeding can stop without stopping the blood flow to the head of the penis. So it's a tricky thing.
So you don't tighten it too much.
Yes.
Okay.
But the problem is that sometimes they tighten it so much, yeah, because they don't know. You see, a basic anatomy, sometimes people need to understand. The blood will go to the head of the penis on either side, you know, and then the veins bring that blood back. So when you are making this thing too tight, then it gets to a point where there's no blood that goes to the head. And if you complain of the pain, they may think that you are one of those boys who've got low tolerance for pain, and not attend to it. You know, then it gets to a point where the head dies, because the nerves, you know, the nerves that are telling you that there's a problem, they die, because nerves they don't survive if there's no fresh blood with oxygen.
Jesus.
And then the pain goes away. You think that, okay, all is well. And then the next minute, few days later, that head of the penis becomes black, what we call gangrene, you know.
Jesus.
And then it falls off.
Dog.
Yes.
The head falls off.
Yes.
Haibo.
We repeat a gangrene to you know. And then that's the time they want to go to hospital. But the head is already finished. Finito. You know. So therefore, the skill of knowing how much pressure you must put to stop the bleeding from the wound without compromising blood supply to the head.
And unless you are a medical person,
You need to be trained.
You don't know.
You need to be trained so that you know how much pressure. You know? That's why we say we need to collaborate. But then others, maybe Tasiga is coming from a private school. You speak English through your nose, and these guys, they think you are better.
Yeah.
And when they are punishing you,
and then you end up dying.
you know, and then there's too much pressure,
Complications and so on.
complications, and all of that. So yeah, I thought let me just share that. I don't want to scare people.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the topic is about the deaths, but also not only the deaths, the maiming of these young men.
Because that's what I was going to ask you next, Doc, that yes, we're talking deaths, but there are those who get injured, like you've said now, the guy's penis falls off. Maybe somebody's penis has been cut, Doc.
Yes.
What then happens to that boy psychologically, to him?
I mean, you know, Tasiga,
Doc.
you know, as men, we take pride in that organ
Yeah.
between our legs. You know,
Yeah.
we take pride, the size,
Yeah. Rainganywa,
the
Yeah.
functionality,
Yeah.
you know, and everything. Without that, we think that, you know, there's no life.
There's no manhood.
Yes,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So obviously that's more in our minds. I mean, you know, we are more than just a penis.
Yes.
But having said that, our lives revolve around the penis.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
I can see B here is laughing.
Yeah.
You know, so now can you imagine then? You are a young man of 18. You are finishing your matric. You've preserved yourself. You have not even experimented in sexual activity, and you told yourself maybe once you pass your matric, or maybe at the matric dance or whatever.
Yeah.
That's when you will, because they normally go around the winter
Oh, yeah.
with the last semester before they finish matric.
Oh.
But others, they go after matric.
Yes.
So you've preserved yourself, you're a good boy. And you think, yeah, you'll start experimenting, you know. And then you go to do ulwaluko, through the process of ulwaluko. And the next minute, you complicate. And you are left with a quarter of a penis or a half of a penis or a 3/4 of a penis without the head. It messes you up because we immediately feel like we are half men
Yes.
because the penis is not functional.
Yes.
You know, you start worrying and you know, it's a problem.
Yeah.
You need reconstruction of that penis so that at least you can be able to pass urine and all of that. So it's a problem. We hear about these deaths, but what we don't hear about is the tens of young men who are left with male genitalia, penises that are not normal, both in terms of functioning and also in terms of how they look. So for me, we must not just focus on the deaths.
Yeah.
We must also focus on those unfortunate young men who could not come back with full penises that are functional.
And nobody talks about them.
No one talks about them. No one talks about them.
It's the first time I'm actually hearing this,
Yes.
that.
Yes. So, I mean, these boys, then they will exclude themselves from interacting with other men because, you know, when you go to the loo and we go there and we're standing, you always... You check on the
Throw
left.
your other eyes
you know,
around.
you know, if you are like Tasika with a third leg,
Yeah.
you know,
Amandla.
you are showing off,
Yeah.
you know, and you check on the left. So there's a lot of teasing that takes place
Yes.
when you have a deformed penis. So it affects them emotionally, deeply, to an extent that others commit suicide.
That's so sad, Doc.
You know? So it's a big problem, and we need to talk about it and not just to talk about the deaths, because these are in the majority, but they are not reported. So you will not find the stats of how many boys or initiates came back with penises that are a quarter or a half or a 3/4, or just the front part of the head was cut because the surgeon was drunk or was paralytic, and therefore he was not able to hold the spear nicely to do that one cut. You know, so we need to talk about this. I mean, about maybe 5 years ago, I can't remember, there was a film that was that came out called Ineba.
Okay. Oh, yes, I remember. It was banned.
Yes. You know, so the traditional people, traditional leaders put pressure on government to ban it,
I remember that time.
you know,
Yeah, I remember that.
to ban it only because that film or movie, it showed aspects of what happens during the, the ulwaluko,
It exposed.
it exposed things that are supposed to be kept in secret.
Okay.
But what's the point of keeping things in secret when young men are dying? Okay, it also talked about an area or exposed an issue of homosexuality as well there.
That comes.
Yeah,
Okay.
in that particular movie,
Oh, okay, okay.
there was the issue of homosexuality. So
Which created problems for the leaders as well.
again, remember, very conservative,
Yes.
traditional leaders. So such a thing to be, but the whole issue was about the things that happened there are not supposed to be known. They are supposed to be in secret. What's the point of keeping things in secret when some of these boys, they come back in body bags? Why keep it in secret when some of these boys, they come back without penises? That is if they survive, the complications. Yes, I must say, 34 deaths in a year or in a summer season, there's thousands more who come back without any problems.
Okay.
So I think we must not give an impression that, there's percentage-wise,
Yeah.
it's small.
It's a lower number.
But one death is one death too many.
Absolutely.
So there shouldn't be any death just because somebody has decided to go and perform a cultural practice. So, but I think just to make sure that I know this is a sensitive subject,
Yes.
and some people will take this out of context. We are focusing on the problem, but we're not saying it's the majority of people who go and do this.
Yeah.
But having said that, no one should be dying, or being maimed,
Yeah.
in the name of culture.
Absolutely. Now, Doc, two things. Do parents have a say in this? And in particularly moms, mothers, single mothers, do they have a say?
They must have a say.
Okay.
They must have a say. They must have a role. In the olden days, the father of that young man, even if he works in the mines, Carltonville or wherever in Gauteng, that was Transvaal those days,
Yeah.
he would take time out from work to go, one, to choose the right traditional surgeon with the right credentials in terms of experience and all of that. Right? That's the first responsibility. Number two, the boy or the young man who's going to undergo this must be in perfect health. So nutrition prior, it's very important. So that would fall in the responsibility of the mother to make sure that, there's proper nutritious food,
Packed for the boy.
I'm talking about, yes,
Okay.
So the role of the father was to oversee the process, from the cutting.
To oversee.
Yes.
He
I
can
mean,
go and view.
He must be there.
Oh, okay.
Yes, to make sure that the traditional surgeon is doing the right thing, is not maiming his son,
Okay.
He's not drunk and cutting people drunk. So the role of the father, if the father is not there, the uncle in overseeing. So what we are seeing is parents abdicating their responsibilities, especially the males. And therefore, there isn't adequate supervision, of what the traditional surgeon does. Number two, during the time of healing, the father should be there on a daily, to be there when the wound is being, inspected and, and is being cleaned and all of that. All right? observing the traditional nurse, Kangata, who does this thing, all right? But some fathers,
Are not present.
they're not there, you know? Or they get somebody who's irresponsible to do this for them, and it doesn't do it, you know? So the role of parents, very important. The when it is done, and who is doing it in terms of the cutting, and who is managing the wound, you know? So if the parents do not play an active, proactive role, things sometimes they turn out bad.
Fall apart.
Right? The mother, I've mentioned the issue of nutrition. For the period that that son is there, she should be the one who makes sure that there's regular nutritious food, you know, with proteins that will actually help with the healing, you know. So I cannot, you know, emphasize it enough, the fact that you cannot outsource this as a parent. You must be involved. Obviously, the mother cannot go there to
oversee
to the mountain, but she can put pressure on the hubby or the uncle, you know, to make sure that things are done right. But many a times things are not done right because the fathers who are supposed to be the ones who oversee this on a daily do not do so. Even if they've outsourced it to an uncle, you find that it's one of those uncles that are just useless.
alcoholic or
And when there are issues, then they're not there to answer. Yeah.
So, Doc, my next one is around the role of the traditional healers. I mean, traditional leaders, your kings, your chiefs. We've got 8 minutes left, Doc. So, what is the role of the traditional leader, and do they take responsibility as custodians of this culture, especially when it's one or two deaths too many in their from their hood or area?
Again, these circumcision schools are in their territories. They should play an important role in terms of who is licensed and who is not licensed.
Yes.
Out those that are illegal or unlicensed. You know, have people from, you know, from his council as a chief or as a headman who go inspect how things are going, you know, and ensure that those schools that are illegal are closed. They are the custodians of the practice. And the practice cannot die in their hands because there's irresponsible people who are doing this. You know, recommend the Ingcibis or traditional surgeons that know what to do, the Amakangata, the traditional nurses that know what to do, you know, and not just allow every Tom, Dick and Harry to open a traditional, you know, circumcision school or to sell themselves as people who have the experience on this matter. So it's very important. And in the Eastern Cape, the House of Traditional Leaders actually plays a big role, and there is an act that regulates this matter in the Eastern Cape, which had to go through the House of Traditional Leaders, and they had to give a lot of input. But some things are good on paper, but the implementation is still a challenge, which is why we're still seeing a lot of deaths. And in some communities in the Eastern Cape that are not used to this practice, like Pondoland, you know, Bizana, you know, where Oartambo comes from, they were not people who do this practice.
Okay.
And therefore, it is still foreign to them. But what we're finding is that young men are in a rush to do this, sometimes even underage, and the father may not be able to tell him or her, or sorry, to tell him that you know, do this and do that, because they themselves did not go through the practice. You know, so there is that problem. And so most of these deaths in the Eastern Cape are actually coming from Pondoland. But no district is immune. Pondoland is the Oar Tambo district, And there's also another district that includes Mbizana. That is where Oartambo comes from. So the role of traditional leaders, very important. Working closely with the relevant people from the Department of Health and stamping their authority in their area so that there are no illegal schools.
Absolutely. Doc, you're speaking about government. I've got a video clip here to hear what government and their responsibilities are, and then after that, maybe we can hear your closing remarks about it.
Okay.
Okay. Are you ready? Okay, cool.
The Department for Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs in the Eastern Cape says 20 initiates have died during the winter initiation season so far. This is a sharp increase to the 11 deaths during the same time last year. COCTA says it's concerned by the unscrupulous behavior of traditional surgeons in the province, where reports of illegal schools have surfaced. Some involved in the practice say that there are ways of preventing the loss of lives. Ronald Masinda has more.
It is a rite of passage that thousands of teenagers have to go through in the Eastern Cape every winter season. But unfortunately for many, they don't make it out alive.
This is a very disturbing situation when you send your child for circumcision and then your child doesn't come back. But the province is trying, but I will not like to say we are doing enough. We're trying, but I think whether we talk about illegal or legal, but we need to look at the areas within the province where they do not even register a single death of an initiate, and perhaps benchmark to see what is it that they are doing best, and then we copy that model and do it in our area.
Andile Siko is a traditional surgeon who has 24 years of experience. He believes there are far too many customary educational institutions operating at any given time.
I think we need to have a debate about schools, initiation schools. What are those exactly, you see? Because as I said, here we have got places, I don't want to call them schools, these places, these are not schools. People just get any bush they can get and they just put those bombers there, which is wrong. We need to have initiation schools so that we can speak about illegal initiation schools then. For now, we can say illegal huts, that's what we can say, or illegal bombers, that's what we can put, not initiation schools.
There you have it, Doc. Sure. Doc, my last question to you is, does this process make a young boy a man?
Well, like I've mentioned, for the majority, where things are done properly, the young man who finishes the process tends to be a much more responsible member of society, who is not a problem to the community, who is not involved in GBV, and all of those things. So that's the majority. But unfortunately, we must also say that some of them, they go in being good boys, but sometimes they come out being bad men. Who are a menace to their communities, partly because of the substance abuse that they go through, but also the mindset that I am now a man and no one is going to tell me what to do. Sometimes they don't even listen to their moms because now they feel they are, supposed to be told anything by their moms. So it is sad, but the majority, they actually benefit from this. That's why I support it.
Yeah.
But the corrupt practices, from surgeons to the traditional nurses to everything that happens there in some of these schools, it needs to be stamped, stamped out, and it needs to be cleaned up. One thing I did not mention, though, is that for the guys who survive and they've got amputated penises, there is hope.
I was going to ask you that last. Yeah.
There is hope.
Jesus.
The University of Stellenbosch, about a decade or so ago, they pioneered penile transplants. You know, so where because there were complications, and then the penis had to be cut, maybe, you know, to only a quarter or a half or whatever. You know, the urology department at Stellenbosch, you know, I think it's Stellenbosch University, you know, they pioneered these penile transplants. So they get the stamp from the initiate who obviously had a complication, and then from a man who has died, who is brain dead, and then is obviously an organ donor, you know, or had signed on, you know, to be organ donor, then that penis from that organ donor can then be, you know, joined with the stump. You know, they join the arteries, they join the nerves and everything. And so at least there's hope now that if you were one of those young men who lost half of your penis or a quarter of your penis, you can now have a penile transplant, and it can function as well as the one that you had before, you know. So there is hope. The only problem is that there's a shortage of people who are willing to donate penises. You know, the demand is obviously largely from black Africans who went through the circumcision situation. The demand is from there. But the people who are more likely or more willing to donate tend to be white people.
Wow.
You know, so somebody else once asked me, so if you join the penis of a black person and a white person, won't you have a black and a white, like a zebra type of penis?
Wow.
No, but with skin grafting, they are able to stretch the skin to an extent that it actually covers the whole area. You know, so you have one color of your penis.
Is that skin coloring, or what? What do you mean skin grafting?
Skin graft, you just take a skin.
Or you pull it?
It's stretched. And in other areas, actually, you take pieces like maybe from around, you know, your thighs area and whatever, and they put some cells, you know, some tissues rather, you know, on that area, and then it grows being dark. And then it covers. So you won't have like a zebra situation, you know, and it functions very well, you know. So it's a solution. But I believe in prevention better than cure. So rather we prevent these, you know, situations than to actually, because it's more costly to do the transplants, you know, than to actually prevent the sepsis that normally kills the, you know, the boys there, you know, the amputations that normally happen, the dehydrations, you know. So there's most of the causes of the complications are preventable.
Can be solved.
And so rather they focus on the prevention. And for those few who are unfortunate, then you consider, you know, the transplants.
So the shortage of penises, Doc, so we can't go after those rapists and borrow their penises.
I wish, but our constitution will not allow us to do that. But guys who have caused harm to society, you know, in some places they are actually castrated.
Yes.
You know, the rapists and stuff. But in our country, because of our constitution, I think that will not fly. But if you asked me, especially the repeat offenders, you know, they deserve to actually, you know, obviously castration is about removing the testes, you know, but I'm sure even that organ, you know, so yeah, but we are in a country where the constitution, everyone has got rights, so it won't happen. But with the shortage of donors, that's one obvious area that would have should have been targeted, but yeah, it won't happen here. But if you wanna donate,
No, Doc, no, not
if you wanna
me.
if you wanna donate, Mr. Masijo, no one will stand in your way. Yeah, we just hope that the recipient has something that is as big as yours.
Wow, Doc. I doubt my other half will allow for me to. Umuntu wami uhamba nayo.
Yes.
Wow, yeah, sure. No, Doc, this has been very informative. Thank you very much. It's been.
It's a sensitive
it's
subject,
a sensitive.
where
It's a
I come
sensitive.
from, I mean, others will be very unhappy with me just by revealing certain things. But at the end of the day,
Yeah.
I took an oath to save lives.
Yes.
And that oath means where I see that people are dying and that those deaths can be prevented, I should get involved.
Absolutely.
But it's difficult because in some communities in the Eastern Cape, just the fact that I'm a medical doctor, I have no say, and I don't know, because what stops me being a black African male Xhosa with the skills, from being part of the situation. But I know of many of my colleagues in the Eastern Cape who are really doing great work. There's a Dr. Madiba in and around Umtata who has for decades been doing great work. There was a mom, a colleague who was a female, Dr. What's her name now? She was based in Nelson Mandela Bay. She used to do great work despite the opposition by men. But she died during COVID. Dr. Mamisa, I've just spoken her name. So there are many doctors who are trying to make a difference, but maybe our voices are not high enough, and our involvement in the communities is not at the level that it should be. So I think let's make it everybody's business.
Yeah.
Parents, uncles, families, doctors, nurses, traditional leaders. Let's really modify this practice so that it can continue and it's not associated with deaths.
Absolutely. Doc, this has been very great chatting to you about this very emotional and tough discussion.
It's a difficult discussion because people are very sensitive. When you talk culture and you are seen to be criticizing culture, then they stop even listening to the merits of what you are saying.
Absolutely.
They just think, oh, you are rubbishing your culture. I love my Xhosa culture. I believe the practice must continue, but it can be modified. We can have 0 deaths. In fact, in some areas of the Eastern Cape, closer, the what we call amahlubi. Yes, yeah. I mean, there's 0 deaths, so which means it's possible.
Yeah. And then obviously you said there's other, cultures that are also doing it. There's less deaths. So clearly there's something they're doing right.
Yes. So if everybody can just play a positive part and we confront the issues and deal with the issues rather than these things being shrouded in secrecy, then there will be no deaths.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doc. All right. This is how we wrap it up. Thank you very much, Doc.
Yeah. Thank you to everybody who listens. And please share some message or two about what you think of what we were talking about. It's a sensitive subject, but we must talk about it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Doc.